Welcome back to Volume 16 of Captain Harold DeMarrero's River Stories. Cap wants to pick up where he left off, talking about bringing his first set of big barges into the New Orleans harbor. Take it away, Cap.
Right. Well, I was telling in the last episode about how deep I was getting down in these bends, but another thing was that these ships, we had no way of talking to the ships that were coming up and down the river. Now these guys on these ships had little portable called channel master radios that they could go in on the frequency that we were on, and we could talk to the ship coming up at, say 50-mile point, and then, do you read me? And then he would flash the lights on his ship if he could read you. And then you would say, I would say, well, flash how many lights that you want for us to pass on. And then he would flash either 1 or 2. And 1 whistle was port to port, 2 was, starboard to starboard. So anyway, that was the only way we had to communicate with these guys. It was kind of hard to see them in the daytime, and I was terrified going down, God, please let me get this down to New Orleans. But I did. And then I started running back and forth between Baton Rouge and St. Louis, New Orleans and St. Louis. And I did it so many times, then watched my partner each time he would go through a bridge, and if I wasn't really felt good about making a bridge, I had no hesitancy but to ask him to help me go through a particular bridge, because I was a pretty good learner, pretty fast learner, and that's I was getting to be a better and better pilot all the time, so that after about a year of doing this, I really knew the Mississippi very well, and I decided to go in and get my first-class pilot license. I was in 1959. I was saying, the 60s, this was in the 50s. And I went in to take the test, and the test, my dad had questions and answers to all the possible questions. There were thousands and thousands of these, to read. Because they tested you on everything from, rules of the road to construction of a boat to, everything you can imagine was in this test. And on the rules of the road, when you took that, you had to make 90% or forget the rest of it. But anyway, I went in, and at the time that I took it, the Coast Guard wasn't given rules and regulations. It was still under the Department of Navigation. And I had professional pilots. One of them had given my dad his exam. And I took the exam, was answering all these questions. And there were hundreds and hundreds of questions. At least 500 or 600 questions. Totally, and they were all essay. There weren't any multiple choice. We never heard of multiple choice at that time. It was all essay. So I took the exam, and I passed it. In my first license, I got from 732 on the Mississippi down to mile 600. So it was a little over 100 miles. But I was now a licensed pilot, like John Hartford ended up being, a few miles on the Illinois, licensed pilot. But then I went into my boss, and I told my boss, I says, I understand that you guys, and I was getting like about $720 a month back then. And I said, I understand that you get a raise if you get a first-class pilot license. And he said, yeah, $10. I said, $10? That's all it's worth to get a first-class pilot license? He said, boy, he says, license don't make the man. And I says, I guess you're right. So I was a pilot, and I went and got a pilot license. So, and over the years, I kept extending it and extending it. making it longer and longer. But anyway, I worked on the Craig M for a couple of years, and then the company came in and decided that they were going to they had to downsize. So everyone with under 11 years of seniority was laid off, and that was naturally one of those. I got laid off, didn't have a job, so then I started doing what they call trip pilot. I would call people they would put me on for a month or a trip or something. Somebody had to, they needed an extra pilot. And I worked for this, made a couple of trips for this guy, Jesse Brent, and down in Greenville. And Jesse was an old river man, and he was an old river captain, and he got his own company going, and he had some pretty nice boats, and they built them all right down there in Greenville, Mississippi. And Jesse predominantly was hauling oil products, had operated tank barges. So I got this job with Jesse and as a trip pilot, and made 2 or 3 trips for him, and I was amazed how easy pushing tank barges was. We went up to Illinois, we had plenty of power, pushing these tank barges. They all fit together, they're perfectly, no drag anywhere. And so after I worked for Jesse, I had another, went and tripped for a guy out of Chicago on a little boat, and with a friend of mine, J.P. Morgan. He was a hell of a riverman, still is. J.P.'s still around. And but we was on this little boat. It had like 800 horsepower, and we was coming down the Illinois River, and we was overloaded. I knew it was overloaded, and all of a sudden the Illinois starts to rise. Well, when it's rising, it's starting to get swift, just like any river does when it rises. Except the Illinois is a lot narrower, so you don't have as much time to correct for a turn or a mistake. So, but anyway, we was coming down, and JP, he was captain on the boat, and the first time I went on board the boat, he said, "Hey, by the way, the refrigerator's full of, that one refrigerator's full of beer. There's a box on top of it. You can put a quarter in there if you want to get a beer out, So, wow, yeah, all right. But you know what? I never have been a beer drinker and wasn't a beer drinker back then. So anyway, but it was amazing to watch JP. He would get kind of half smashed every watch. And then we was going down on a place. There was a place on the Illinois River. It had an old bridge in it that was very difficult to get through. This thing was like 128-foot wide spans to get 105-foot wide barges through, But anyway, they decided they was going to get rid of that old bridge, and they built this new one just below it. And it was a really nice wide bridge, and it had big, wide wooden fenders on the side for protection fenders. So anyway, my friend, he's going down through, I says, "You're going to back up down there, aren't you, and flank that bridge?" "No, I'm going to drive it, JP." And he goes down, man, the old bridge, and he catches a notch on our barges and hits the concrete on the old bridge, and then the barges on the lead barges break loose on one side. Then they start turning towards the new bridge, and they go right straight through the new bridge. So, JP.
It was a mess, huh?
It was a mess.
Okay, well, let's wrap it up. Thanks for watching Captain Harold DeMarrero's River Stories, and come back and watch some more.